For the next part of this event, I will pose some questions to the panel members first, and then after about 5 minutes so, we will open the questions to the audience. So first of all, to Trudie. You mentioned that we are normally, as scientists, as people who apply for research grants, we don't share. It's true, because we're all very set up to be competitive, especially since research dollars are shrinking. So how do you resolve this conflict between sharing and being competitive?
Thank you. I think there's a few other people who can pick up on that one as well. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's inherent in how scientists are brought up in the system that we work in. We have to compete for grants and papers and funding. And data sharing is the next big thing as well. Everybody's talking about big data and data sharing, and we're all supposed to be sharing our trial data, which is obviously one of Ben's interests as well, and extremely important. And the prospect of letting data go and losing the currency that we all trade in as researchers in publications and recognition for what you do is a massive issue. And I think it comes right down to the way research is funded and the way research is recognised. So I think we need to call on funding institutions and the journal editors and the university recognition systems to look at how that can happen. Because it's one thing sharing the data, which is the way we're all going, and I'm sure that's going to become likely to, we now have to register our trials, and I think soon we're going to have to all share our data, which I think is a good thing. But that needs to be incentivised, and so there needs to be motivations to do that. But it's one thing sharing the data, but unless you share the methods by which you collected that data, and Abba touched on it really nicely about the standardisation and sharing best practice, it's comparing apples and pears at the moment. So we need to be able to talk about how we did those studies and how we collected that data in order to make the data meaningful to be shared and give us incentives to do so. Yeah. I'm sure there's others that
I think as universities always recognize us by our publications, then nobody's going to share until they're published, which could delay the sharing for another year. So, perspective from Abba, what do you think?
Well, I think maybe we should, from me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we should change the rules of the game. Why should publication be the currency that is circulated? Yeah. I don't know if you can have something for ideas, it's the ideas that matter, or it could be, and I think maybe that if the reason we don't like to share is that we think it is going to harm us. So if there are checks and balances somehow put in, that the sharing of data actually is credited and it doesn't bring you a disadvantage or doesn't get someone else an undue advantage. So you level the playing field.
Yeah. I think journal editors would not accept anything that's been publicly shared. Ben?
So I think what's really interesting in this area is that there have been a lot of challenges around getting the message out from journal editors that they don't mind if people do share their results ahead of publication. So the ICMJE have, since the FDA Amendment Act 2007, which says everybody has to post their results on clinicaltrials.gov within 12 months of completion of the trial for any trial with a site, at least one site in the US. The ICMJE, which is the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, said that all of their member journals have committed to accept for publication any trial, even if they've posted their results on clinicaltrials.gov, so they don't regard it as prior publication. And that's all of the biggest scientific and medical journals in the world. And I think what's really interesting is that the message clearly doesn't get through to academics and doctors that journals don't mind if you post results on clinicaltrials.gov. I actually think it's amazing sometimes when you're in a room of trialists, they say, oh, that's ridiculous, how can you possibly get the results of a trial done in 12 months? I think we have to remember who the customers are and why we're doing trials in the first place. We do trials to resolve uncertainty. We want to get everybody on the best currently available treatment, and once we are in a position to find out what that is, then there's avoidable mortality and morbidity on the table, and we should get the results out in 3 months, not 12, and certainly not 2 years.
Yeah. Thank you. And now the next question is, if we do share and we encourage more people to take on research. So to Ken and Babatunde, can you tell us why people in the resource limited settings should take up research? Because right now, there's, as you say, there's very little research being done.
Thank you very much for the question. As you know, the burden of the disease in Africa and people in less resource countries need to take up research because we need the sustainability. In the past, we used to have researchers coming from developed countries. They come and, we used to call them parachute researchers. They come and collect the samples. They come back and analyze here. But we want the samples to be analyzed in Africa. And that's the one way by which we can also develop the capacity in Africa. And that's one way by which all of us can also still be able to sustain the research in Africa. And that's why we need to take up research in a less developed country.
Yes. And I think to your point about we always think about the three big diseases of destruction. I think having the capacity to do research locally really can help people address problems that are, that will provide evidence for better care.
I mean, that's evidence-based research is where we must go. But like I say every time I speak to my colleagues, I think we should start to think basic research, not just health research. Mm-hmm. If we start to think basic research, then maybe we might get somewhere fast. Because you look at this pen and say, how can I make this pen better? That if you start to look at research in that way, then maybe people will begin to think it more seriously. That's the way I look at it, as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next question I'd like to address to both Roger and Trudie is why now for the process map? Is it something we couldn't do before? Or is it the right time?
Yeah, it'd be great to hear Roger's perspective on whether we're using digital technology well enough yet and if we can do more. But I think what has often happened historically is all the capacity development efforts have been focused on one protocol or one disease or even one region. And so the efforts that have happened before have been about supporting trials in a particular country or around one particular protocol, or running HIV studies, for example, which is great and has made a massive impact. But it's really hard to get initiatives that are cross-cutting and support research in general. And we've never been very good at harnessing digital technology outside of the commercial area. I think that's what I'd like Roger to touch on.
So I think it always comes down to two qualities: engagement, which is to lend itself to the other topic, but also working out why we're doing this. What's the point of all this? And then you work backwards. So there's always different settings and there's different sort of outcomes, and obviously fundamentally in general terms we're talking about data, we're talking about learnings, we're talking about the clinical trials and increasing data to allow us to know what to do. But we go back to the story about engagement, and so just to sort of slightly steal some of the moment from the earlier topic, the way that we describe it is in win conditions. So you have a range of stakeholders in the model. If we see it as an ecosystem, you have obviously the medical communities, you have the medical professions, you have the people on the ground. There's just so many moving parts. But if one can align the win conditions of all parties, then suddenly you're going to have a transformational experience. So I can talk far more eloquently to the commercial settings of this, so in a business, but it is a universal concept. So it's, how people are being rewarded is clearly a problem. So you have to realign that process. Now, for example, in academia meets commerce, I'm aware that the research grants are going to get pulled unless they can demonstrate impact. Well, the win condition then is you find a marriage between companies that are needing those brains and those brain power, and you remove those silos. So that lends itself as an example, perhaps, where you think about the rewarding mechanics just need to be tailored more appropriately.
Yes, thank you. And I'd just like to pose one more question to Trudie before I open up to the audience. Trudie, what can we all do tomorrow?
Thank you. Well, it'd be great if if everyone here could, especially our research colleagues, could tell your collaborators and your partners and the people back in your labs and your clinical teams about the platform and get the word out and get the profile raised. I mean, we've been running this thing for 4 years, but we've never done anything like this before. So this is the first time we've really properly shouted about it and made a noise, because we think we're at a point now where, you know, we need to really do that, and it's past the point of proof of principle, and we need to really get the word out now. But also the use and the sharing. So many of you here in the room are involved with quite high-profile research groups and research studies yourselves, and I'm sure you've got hard drives full of training materials and templates and resources and consent forms. Send them in. They can get put out and shared, and that's the whole point. So we should use it and share more. But finally, funding, our age-old angst in academic research. This has been really hard to get this platform funded. It's been a real fight, and yes, we have fantastic sort of central support from the Gates Foundation because they get it, but we've got a lot more to do, and we've got some fantastic ideas of things we want to do, particularly around training and knowledge transfer, really harnessing digital technology properly, which is expensive, but by doing this, we're sharing the digital technology we invest in, so it's a sensible investment. But we fall between the stools. We're very grateful for the Welllcome Trust today for funding us, and we've got our traditional research funders across the globe, but they focus generally on single hypothesis-driven research, so it's very hard to make what we do fit. And then you have the development agencies on the other side who fund delivery of interventions and implementation, feeding programs, actual drugs and vaccine delivery, and capacity development, especially cross-cutting capacity development, which is hard to label, really falls between the stools. So it's a really, I'm not apologising for the fact that we need some more partners and we need to really work with other groups. So, yeah,
thank you.
That'd be great.
Thank you.